The alien scout laughed so hard that his purple carapace rattled, the sound like marbles in a blender. It was the kind of laughter that made his fellow scouts double over, wheezing through mandibles designed more for tearing flesh than expressing amusement. They pointed at the human standing barefoot in the mud, holding what looked like a child's toy blowgun strung with darts carved from animal bone. The human just stood there, dripping rainwater, eyes dark as coal pits, saying nothing. His face was the blank, tight-lipped mask of someone who had already decided how the story would end. And when the laughter died down enough for the captain to sneer through glistening fangs and say, "Primitive creature, surrender and we might keep you as a pet," the man raised one eyebrow and said in a calm, steady voice, "None of you leave alive." It should have sounded ridiculous. One man with handmade weapons against 8 scouts armored in carapace plating, plasma rifles slung over shoulders, eyes glowing with night vision implants. The aliens glanced at one another, then at the human, then erupted into fresh peals of laughter, slapping their armored thighs, kicking at the mud as if the absurdity of it might break them in half. Even the captain's mandibles twitched in amusement, though there was something in the human's tone, some quiet conviction, that clung like smoke in the air. The rain thickened, sliding in sheets down the skeletal trees around the clearing. The ship squatted behind the scouts, its hull hissing as steam rose from its cooling engines. They had landed expecting to find an abandoned wilderness world. Their scans had shown no cities, no significant population, just the faint trace of life they thought would be primitive animals at best. And now here was this man, barefoot and silent, standing in the center of the clearing like he had been waiting all day for them to arrive. One of the younger scouts, eager to impress, raised his rifle. His name was difficult to pronounce in any human tongue, something like Clickthra, but it didn't matter because in less than 10 seconds he would no longer be breathing. He leveled the rifle, charged it with a sharp hum, and grinned through his mandibles as the human just stood there, not even flinching. The captain barked a word of command, but Clickthra had already fired. A bolt of green plasma shrieked across the clearing, hitting the human square in the chest, except it didn't. At the last possible moment the man moved with a speed that shouldn't have been possible. The bolt seared into a tree, exploding bark and sap, while the human bent at the waist like water flowing around a stone, then straightened as if nothing had happened. The only sound was the soft puff of air as he raised the blowgun to his lips and released a dart no thicker than a matchstick. Clickthra didn't even feel it land. It pricked his neck like the bite of an insect. He laughed again, louder this time, because how could a toothpick hurt someone bred for war? He turned to mock the human properly, but the words gurgled in his throat. He staggered, rifle slipping from his claws. Something was wrong with his vision. His legs folded. He tried to shout a warning but instead collapsed face first into the mud, convulsed once, and went perfectly still. The laughter stopped. The man lowered the blowgun, expression unchanged. Rain ran down his cheekbones like sweat. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He only watched them the way a man might watch flies buzzing over a carcass. The captain barked a curse and the scouts scrambled into defensive positions. Rifles rose, sensors whirred, drones zipped from the ship's belly with red lights flickering like angry eyes. The clearing bloomed with electronic noise, static hissing through the rain as scanners swept over the human, trying to read body heat, heart rate, toxins, anything that might explain what just happened. But there was nothing. One scout crept forward, weapon aimed steady at the human's chest. He knelt by Clickthra's body, ran a clawed hand over the neck, the face, the glassy eyes. His mandibles clicked nervously. No burns. No visible wound beyond a dot smaller than a freckle. His scanner beeped, then stuttered with confusion. Neural activity gone. Heart stopped in seconds. No chemical traces they recognized. The poison, if it was poison, was unlike anything in their databases. The captain ordered the man surrounded. 4 rifles locked on his torso, 1 on his head. The man looked from one weapon to the next like someone examining mildly interesting insects. Then he turned slightly, gaze flicking toward the ship, and for the first time since they landed, the captain felt something odd crawl along the back of his skull. It took him a moment to name the sensation. Fear. It didn't make sense. The man was unarmored, underfed, armed with sticks and bones. Yet Clickthra lay dead at his feet, and the poison was already spreading beyond the body. Black lines crawled across the fallen scout's carapace like veins of mold racing through bread. A sickly sweet smell drifted upward. One of the drones beeped sharply and fell from the air, its circuits shorted by something the scanners couldn't identify. Another drone veered suddenly left, smashed into a tree, and shattered like glass. The man hadn't moved. The captain shouted for the rifles to fire, but in the same instant something rustled through the tree line, a whispering, skittering noise like dry leaves sliding over stone. Shapes moved just beyond sight, quick and low, vanishing when you tried to look straight at them. The forest itself seemed to shift closer. The man finally spoke again, voice calm, almost polite. "Leave now and burn this place from orbit. That is your only chance." None of the scouts moved. He looked down at Clickthra's corpse, at the black veins crawling across the carapace, then back at the captain. "Otherwise," he said softly, "none of you leave alive." Something howled from deep in the forest. Something that sounded hungry. The rain kept falling. The scouts tightened their formation around the captain, rifles sweeping across the tree line. The storm above hammered the clearing with sheets of rain as if the sky itself were trying to wash away what had just happened. Clickthra's body twitched once, a final nerve spasm, then went rigid. Black veins spread across his shell like cracks in old porcelain, glowing faintly with a sickly green light from underneath. None of the scanners recognized it. The drones circling above kept buzzing error codes, each one spitting out nonsense readings before fritzing into silence. 2 more fell from the air with hollow thuds, lifeless and smoking. The captain ordered a containment scan, his voice hard as steel, but the scout in charge of the tech gave a confused clicking noise with his mandibles. The readings made no sense. The poison, if that was what it was already reacting to the alien biology in ways their systems couldn't categorize. Neural breakdown. Tissue hardening. Something like a spore network blooming inside the body as if it were soil. The dead scout's eyes turned a milky white. The human didn't move. He stood there as though he had all the time in the world while 8 rifles pointed at his chest. He wasn't even breathing hard. He looked bored, if anything, and that bothered the aliens more than any weapon could have. A cornered enemy should look afraid. It should beg or snarl or rage. It shouldn't stand there as if the ending had already been written. The captain barked for the others to spread out. The remaining scouts moved toward the tree line, trying to flank the man, but the forest was dense and wrong somehow. Every tree looked the same. Every shadow seemed to ripple when they weren't looking. It was as though the wilderness itself disapproved of their presence. One scout aimed carefully and fired a plasma bolt. It screamed through the rain straight at the man's skull. He didn't even duck this time. The bolt stopped midair with a hiss, shattering into sparks before it touched him, like raindrops on a hot pan. The scout stared in disbelief. The rifle's system sputtered and went dark in his claws. The human finally shifted his weight, moving slowly, deliberately, as if surrounded by amateurs at a game only he understood. He stooped, picked up one of his darts from the mud, and tucked it calmly into the sling over his shoulder. The gesture was so ordinary it almost made the aliens angrier than if he had attacked again. The captain ordered the drones to activate perimeter shock protocols. Blue arcs of energy flickered between them, forming a crackling cage of light around the clearing. The idea was simple. Anything biological that tried to pass through would fry instantly. The man glanced once at the barrier and then at the captain. He didn't look impressed. Then the barrier faltered. One by one the drones began shutting down, lights dimming, falling like broken toys. The barrier collapsed in seconds. A sound carried through the trees then, low and rhythmic, like distant drums. The rain made it hard to tell where it came from. It could have been everywhere. The captain cursed in his native tongue, a series of sharp clicks and snarls. He ordered his scouts back toward the ship. The man didn't try to stop them. He watched them retreat with the calm detachment of someone checking weather patterns. Inside the ship's main bay, scanners whirred louder than the storm. The surviving scouts clustered around the central console while the captain barked for updates. The dead one was already being incinerated in the rear compartment. A containment drone wheeled the body in, locked the chamber, and set the heat to white fire until nothing remained but ash. Yet the readings on the poison still didn't stop flashing warnings. Whatever it was, burning the corpse hadn't erased it from the ship's sensors. One scout swore softly. He was replaying the moment Clickthra fell on a loop, frame by frame. The dart's impact looked almost casual, like a mosquito landing. The readings before death showed only a tiny spike in neural activity, then nothing. Instant shutdown. Not even nerve gas could kill that fast. The captain turned to the others. He told them to stop underestimating the human. He was obviously some kind of soldier, maybe the last survivor of a war they hadn't detected. That would explain the weapons, the poisons, the traps. Maybe he had lived alone in this forest for years, preparing for anyone who came from the sky. One of the younger scouts suggested calling the fleet. The captain rejected the idea immediately. Reporting failure after encountering a single native with sticks and bones would be humiliating beyond words. They would handle this themselves. Outside the ship, the man vanished into the rain-soaked trees without a sound. The scouts launched more drones, this time armed with scanners and plasma cutters. They zipped through the forest canopy, mapping heat signatures, analyzing movement patterns, tracking every possible trail. The feeds poured into the ship's monitors, each one a shifting mosaic of infrared shapes and thermal traces. At first the man appeared in 3 different locations at once. Then 5. Then none at all. The captain leaned over the screens, mandibles tight with frustration. Either the scanners were malfunctioning again or the man was using the terrain to scramble their readings. Every time they thought they had him surrounded, the signals dissolved like smoke. One drone found something, a clearing with strange patterns carved into the soil, circles and lines radiating outward like a map or maybe a warning. In the center stood a rough wooden post strung with alien armor plates taken from previous battles. Blaster burns marked each one. The post itself dripped dark stains that didn't look like rainwater. Before the drone could send more data, its feed went black. The captain ordered 2 scouts to investigate on foot. They found the clearing exactly as the drone had shown it. The wooden post stood silent under the rain, the armor plates clattering softly in the wind. The moment they stepped into the clearing, the ground beneath their feet shifted. Nets of woven vines snapped upward, yanking one scout into the air before he could react. The other spun to help, but a dart hissed out of nowhere and buried itself in his shoulder. He dropped instantly, limbs locking, eyes rolling back. The first scout struggled against the net, but more darts followed, landing with soft thuds. By the time the rest of the squad arrived, both scouts were gone. Not dead. Just gone, nets and all, dragged into the trees by something unseen. The captain stared into the dripping forest. The laughter from earlier felt like a memory from another lifetime. No one was laughing now. The rain kept falling in silver sheets as the captain stood at the edge of the forest staring into the shadows where his scouts had disappeared. No one moved. The trees swayed slowly in the wind, their branches creaking like old bones, but otherwise the wilderness was silent. Too silent. The squad's breathing rasped inside their helmets, amplified by the comm system until it sounded like a chorus of nervous animals. Somewhere in the distance a crow called once, then nothing. The forest had gone back to holding its breath after the violence, as if waiting for the next move. The captain finally ordered the remaining scouts into defensive positions around the ship. He spoke sharply, the kind of voice that tolerated no delay. Drones zipped overhead, scanning every inch of the perimeter, rifles tracked the tree line, sensors swept for movement. He told himself this was just a setback, nothing more. They were soldiers. They had the best technology in 3 systems. A few tricks from some feral human in a jungle did not change that. But then he remembered Clickthra collapsing in the mud without even a scream, the black veins crawling across his body, and the 2 scouts dragged off by something none of them saw. He shoved the thought aside. Fear was poison enough without the human's help. He summoned his second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Trask who had fought in a dozen campaigns. Trask suggested burning the forest. Just sweep it with plasma fire until nothing moved. The captain almost agreed, but something about the man's earlier words held him back. Leave now and burn this place from orbit. That is your only chance. The way he had said it, calm and certain, made it sound less like a threat and more like a fact. Before he could decide, a voice crackled over the comms. Movement near the western perimeter. Multiple contacts. The captain spun toward the tree-line just in time to see shadows slipping between the trees, too fast to count. He raised his rifle. The others followed, forming a half-circle around the landing zone. Figures emerged slowly from the dark. At first the scouts thought it was the human again, but then they saw the shapes were wrong. Taller. Bulkier. Covered in ragged armor pieces stitched together from alien metal and animal bone. Their eyes glowed faintly in the rain. The captain shouted for identification protocols, but the scanners refused to lock on. The figures ignored the weapons pointed at them and stepped into the clearing. There were 5 of them. 4 carried crude spears tipped with glassy shards. The 5th was unarmed and smaller, limping slightly. It made a sound then, a clicking voice garbled through a translator that barely worked. It spoke their language. The scouts froze. None of them expected that. The captain demanded it repeat itself. The smaller figure raised its hands, palms outward, the universal gesture for peace. It said it was a scout too, from a different unit, crashed here months ago. It claimed the human had spared its life in exchange for information about the others. It claimed the human hated the fleet and the planet both. The captain did not believe a word of it. He kept his rifle aimed at the speaker's chest and demanded proof. The limping figure said the human was building something in the forest, using pieces of alien technology salvaged from wreckage. Weapons that could turn their own systems against them. The poison darts were just the beginning. If they didn't stop him soon, he would infect more than just a handful of scouts. He could infect ships, fleets, maybe whole worlds. The captain almost laughed at the absurdity, but the memory of Clickthraw's body stopped him. The smaller figure lowered its hands and offered to lead them to the human's hideout. It said it knew where he was hiding, what he was planning. Trask muttered that it was a trap. The captain agreed but said they had no choice. Sitting here waiting for more scouts to vanish was worse. They followed the limping figure into the forest, weapons ready. The rain muffled their steps, but not the constant hiss of drones overhead scanning everything. The captain ordered 2 to stay with the ship, while the rest advanced in a tight formation. The forest closed around them like a living thing. Vines hung low, dripping water, roots twisted underfoot, branches clawed at their armor. Every few minutes the column halted at some noise ahead, only to find nothing but swaying leaves. The smaller figure limped along steadily, never looking back. After half an hour they reached a clearing with a massive tree split down the middle by lightning. Its hollow trunk gaped like an open mouth. The smaller figure pointed at it, and said the human used this place as a base. The captain signaled 2 scouts forward. They crept inside the hollow tree with weapons raised. Their helmet lights cut through the dark interior, revealing empty space, damp walls, piles of leaves, nothing else. Then the ground opened beneath them. One moment they were inside the tree, the next they were gone, swallowed by a pit lined with sharpened stakes. The others heard the screams cut off almost instantly. The captain wheeled around, but the smaller figure had vanished. Shapes moved in the trees above them. Darts hissed through the rain. One scout fell, then another. The squad fired upward blindly, plasma bolts sizzling through branches and leaves, but the enemy moved too fast. Shadows leapt from tree to tree with impossible speed, voices whispering in a dozen languages at once. The captain shouted for a retreat. The surviving scouts ran through the undergrowth toward the landing zone, branches whipping their armor, mud sucking at their boots. Darts kept coming from every direction. One grazed Trask's leg and he dropped mid-stride, body locking in seconds. By the time the survivors reached the ship, only 4 of them remained. The captain stumbled up the ramp gasping orders to seal the hatch. Plasma fire scorched the tree-line as covering fire, but no enemy appeared. Inside the bay the captain stared at the survivors, chest heaving. Half the squad gone in less than an hour. The ship's lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. On the monitors the drones still circled overhead sending images of empty forest. No movement. No heat signatures. No sign of the human or the traitor scout who had led them into the trap. The captain slammed a clawed fist onto the console. This was no longer a scouting mission. This was war. The storm eased by morning, but the air inside the ship felt heavier than the clouds outside. The captain stood at the central console, mandibles tight, watching footage from the surviving drones. They showed nothing but wet trees and empty clearings. No sign of the human, no sign of the traitor scout, no sign of the missing soldiers. The forest had swallowed everything like it had never happened. One of the younger scouts worked the scanners furiously, running chemical sweeps on the soil samples from the clearing where Clickthra had died. The readings showed the same strange pattern as before. The poison clung to everything, spreading in tiny invisible filaments. It was alive in some way none of them understood, not just a toxin but something more, something that adapted to alien biology like it had been designed for it. The longer they studied the samples, the more their instruments glitched, as if the machines themselves were reacting badly to whatever it was. The captain turned away from the screens and ordered the ship's engines primed. He wanted the option of leaving quickly if things went worse. 2 scouts protested, arguing that abandoning the mission would shame them before the fleet. The captain silenced them with one look. Pride was worth nothing if they were dead. Before they could decide their next move, the main hatch alarm blared. Weapons raised instantly, scouts forming a defensive ring. The outer doors cycled open with a hiss of steam, and something stepped inside. It was not the human. It was the traitor scout, the one who had led them into the ambush. He walked slowly, hands raised, face blank under the rain dripping from his carapace. Plasma rifles locked on him from every side, but he made no move to run. The captain ordered him to stop where he stood and demanded to know why he should not be cut down immediately. The traitor said the ambush had been punishment for their arrogance, not his betrayal. The human controlled the forest now, he claimed. Everything in it answered to him. The poison, the traps, even the animals. If they wanted to survive, they needed to listen. The captain almost laughed but stopped himself. He asked what the human wanted. The traitor said he wanted the invaders gone, every last one of them, before the forest itself consumed them. He said the poison was not just a weapon but a message. It carried data coded into alien neural patterns, a language the human had taught himself to write after dissecting their fallen scouts. Each death spread the message farther, through blood, through air, through anything living it touched. One of the surviving scouts cursed in disbelief, but the traitor ignored him. He said if even one of them escaped to the fleet, the infection would travel with them, hidden inside their systems, their bodies, maybe even their ships. It would wait until the invasion began, then burn through everything at once. The captain studied the traitor's face carefully. It showed no fear, no triumph, only exhaustion. If the story was true, the human had turned their own biology into a weapon against them. It seemed impossible, yet Clickthra's death and the spreading contamination in the lab samples gave the words weight. The traitor said the human had a final offer. Leave the planet now, burn the infected bodies from orbit, and never return. Stay, and none of them would leave alive. The ship fell silent except for the rain hammering the hull. The surviving scouts shifted uneasily, mandibles clicking softly. The captain looked from one face to another and saw doubt spreading like the black veins on Clickthra's corpse. He demanded to know where the human was now. The traitor hesitated before admitting he could lead them there, but warned they might not survive the meeting. The captain decided to risk it. He needed answers. They left the ship in a tight formation, rifles ready, drones overhead. The traitor walked ahead slowly, limping slightly as before. The forest dripped around them, green and silent except for the distant calls of unseen animals. The mud sucked at their boots like it wanted to keep them. After an hour they reached a ridge overlooking a valley. In the center stood a structure the scanners had somehow missed, a rough shelter built from metal scraps and tree trunks fused together by heat. Smoke rose from a pit beside it. The traitor said this was where the human lived. The captain signaled the scouts forward in a wide arc, surrounding the shelter. No movement came from inside. The captain ordered the drones closer. Their feeds showed racks of weapons made from scavenged alien tech, dart launchers lined with bone needles, armor plates stripped from fallen scouts. It was a workshop of war built with patient, methodical hands. Then the human stepped out. He moved slowly, calmly, as if expecting them. He carried no weapon in his hands, but the blowgun hung at his side. His face was streaked with mud, but his eyes were steady. The scouts raised rifles, but the captain signaled them to hold. The human looked directly at the captain. He spoke in the alien tongue, the words rough but clear. "Leave now," he said, "or this spreads beyond your control." The captain asked what it was. The human said it was their own technology turned against them. The poison carried fragments of alien code stolen from their dead, spliced with Earth's most vicious pathogens, designed to adapt faster than they could contain it. Every scout who died carried it farther. Every drone that crashed spread it wider through circuits and sensors and air filters. One of the younger scouts shouted that he was bluffing. The human only turned and pointed toward the tree line. There, half hidden by leaves, lay the bodies of animals twisted by black veins crawling under their fur. They had not been shot. They had simply died where they stood. The captain felt a cold weight settle in his chest. If even part of this was true, the invasion fleet above would never stand a chance. The human repeated his demand. "Leave now. Burn the bodies. Never return." The traitor scout stood very still beside him, as though the choice belonged to the captain alone. The forest waited around them, silent, endless, as if holding its breath for the answer. The captain did not give his answer right away. He stood there in the rain, staring at the man with the blowgun at his side and the silent forest behind him. The surviving scouts shifted nervously, their rifles trained but fingers tight on the triggers. The air itself felt strange now, thicker somehow, as if the forest was listening. The human's words hung over them like a blade, the threat not screamed in anger but spoken in a calm tone that made it worse. It was the certainty in his voice that dug under the captain's armor. Before the captain could respond, a sharp alarm crackled over the comms. Reinforcements had arrived. The second wave of scouts was dropping fast through the clouds, their transports carving through the storm with streaks of blue flame. The captain's mandibles twitched in relief and dread at the same time. Reinforcements meant more firepower, but also more soldiers who did not yet understand what they were facing. He tried to warn them, but the comm channels buzzed with static, then went dead. The human seemed unsurprised. He turned his eyes toward the sky where the dropships streaked lower through the rain. Then he looked back at the captain and said they had made their choice. His voice was almost sad. The first transport touched down in a clearing half a kilometer away. The second followed close behind. Armored figures spilled from the ramps with rifles ready, moving in perfect formation. They advanced through the trees like a tide of metal and light, confident in their numbers, scanning for threats. The captain opened a calm line to order them back, but nothing carried through. The static screamed louder until it was just a wall of noise. One by one the reinforcements' locator signals blinked out on the ship's screens. No deaths reported. No combat alerts. Just silence. The captain cursed and ordered his surviving scouts to fall back toward the ship. The human did not stop them. He watched them go with those dark, steady eyes, then vanished into the trees without a sound. As they retreated, the forest began to change. The captain saw it first in the undergrowth, the way the plants seemed to move though there was no wind. Vines twisted slightly as if following them. Leaves folded shut after they passed. A faint glow shimmered along tree trunks like veins under skin. The younger scouts muttered uneasily, weapons snapping toward every flicker of motion. They reached the edge of the clearing where the first reinforcements had landed. The transports sat empty. No soldiers. No bodies. The equipment was scattered, rifles lying in mud, drones buzzing in slow circles as if waiting for commands that would never come. Then something moved between the trees. Figures stepped into view one by one. At first the captain thought the missing soldiers had returned, but then he saw their faces. Black veins crawled beneath their skin like cracks in glass. Their eyes glowed faintly as they turned toward the living scouts. One of the reinforcements opened his mouth, as if to speak, but only a wet hiss came out. Then they charged. The captain shouted for open fire. Plasma bolts ripped through the clearing, burning holes through armor and flesh, but the infected soldiers kept coming. They moved too fast, ignoring wounds that should have dropped them. When they fell, they crawled forward until more shots tore them apart. The surviving scouts fought in a tight circle, rifles blazing, but for every infected soldier that fell, 2 more came from the trees. The poison had spread through them like fire through dry grass. It burned not only their bodies but their minds, twisting them into something neither human nor alien. Then the beasts came. The captain had heard of them before, experimental war creatures bred for planetary assaults. 4 meters tall, plated with armor grown from living tissue, jaws like industrial shears. The reinforcements must have released them before contact was lost. Now the beasts charged through the trees with a sound like falling stone. For a moment they tore through everything in their path, slamming infected soldiers aside like dolls, ripping them apart with claws and teeth. But the black veins were already crawling up their legs where blood touched. Their roars turned into something else, something broken and furious. The beasts began attacking everything, infected scouts, even each other, until the clearing was nothing but chaos and fire. The captain ordered a full retreat to the ship. The surviving scouts ran through mud and rain while plasma bolts sizzled past their heads and the beasts roared behind them. One soldier fell screaming as vines whipped around his legs, dragging him into the trees. Another collapsed when a dart hit his neck from nowhere. The human was out there somewhere, watching everything burn. By the time the survivors reached the landing zone, only 3 of them remained with the captain. The ship's engines were already running, lights cutting through the storm. They stumbled up the ramp as the first of the beasts crashed through the tree line behind them, black veins glowing under its armored hide. The captain ordered the ship's weapons to fire. Plasma cannons lit the clearing, tearing the beast apart in a storm of heat and light, but pieces of it kept crawling forward even as they burned. Finally the ship's thrusters roared and the vessel lifted off the ground, engines churning the mud below into boiling craters. From the cockpit the captain saw the forest alive with fire and movement. Infected soldiers swarmed through the trees. The beasts rampaged in all directions, some collapsing under the poison's grip, others roaring as they tore through anything living. Then he saw the human again, standing on a ridge above the chaos with the rain falling around him. He raised one hand toward the sky as if signaling something. The ship's warning siren screamed. Systems flickered as if struck by an electromagnetic pulse. The infection had reached the circuitry. Lights dimmed, engines stuttered, controls locked for 2 full seconds before emergency protocols rebooted everything. The captain realized the human had never needed to shoot them down. If the infection reached the main reactor or the engines, the ship would destroy itself from the inside. They climbed higher through the storm while below the forest burned and screamed. The captain stared down at the chaos and felt the first edge of panic cutting through his anger. Whatever this human had created, it was spreading faster than they could escape. The ship shook as it climbed through the storm clouds, engines howling against the wind. The captain gripped the railing beside the cockpit, mandibles locked tight, eyes on the screens flickering with red warnings. Hull integrity compromised. Contamination detected in lower compartments. Reactor shielding unstable. The human had said it would spread beyond their control, and now the words returned like a knife twisting slowly. Every system they relied on felt fragile under his threat, like they were carrying the weapon with them instead of escaping it. Behind the captain, the surviving scouts argued in low voices. 2 demanded they abandon the mission and flee the planet before the infection reached the reactor core. Another insisted they turn back and finish the human before he could spread it farther. Their voices cracked with fear no matter how hard they tried to hide it. The forest, the poison, the infected soldiers, the beasts turning on everything around them, none of it felt like a battle anymore. It felt like the planet itself had decided they did not belong. The ship broke through the last wall of clouds into a gray sky streaked with lightning. Below them the jungle burned in patches where plasma fire had scorched it to ash. Smoke climbed in thin columns through the rain, carrying with it the smell of burned metal and blood. Somewhere down there the humans still moved through the chaos, alive when none of them should have been. The captain ordered a scan for his position. Static crawled across every screen. The infection had reached the sensor arrays. One by one the external cameras failed until only the cockpit view remained. They saw nothing but fire and shadow. A sharp alarm cut through the cabin. Hull breach in the cargo bay. The captain spun toward the rear monitors in time to see vines thick as cables punching through the ship's landing struts, twisting upward like snakes. The plants moved with deliberate purpose, sliding along the hull as if searching for something. One reached a heat vent and shoved its way inside. Sparks sprayed from the wall panel beside the crew compartment. The infection was inside the wiring now. The captain ordered all power routed to the engines. The ship roared higher, straining for orbit. G-forces crushed the crew into their harnesses as the sky darkened from gray to black. Stars appeared overhead, cold and sharp through the thinning atmosphere. They were almost free. Then the human's voice came over the comm system. It was calm, steady, carrying through every speaker in the ship though no signals showed on their boards. He told them they should have left when they had the chance. His words echoed through the corridors like he was standing right there among them. One of the younger scouts tore off his headset with a curse, but the voice kept coming from the walls themselves. The captain shouted for his location, demanded to know how he had tapped their systems. The human told him it was not just their systems anymore. The infection had merged with every circuit and sensor it touched. Killing him would change nothing now. It was part of the ship, part of the soldiers already infected, part of the reinforcements tearing each other apart in the jungle below. The reactor alarms shrieked suddenly. Containment failure in the outer conduits. Automatic safeties slammed into place, sealing bulkheads, locking out controls. The ship was tearing itself apart from the inside. The captain ordered manual override and turned the ship toward orbit anyway. If they could reach the fleet, they might have a chance to warn them before it spread farther. But as the ship climbed higher, a new signal appeared on the main screen. It came from the fleet itself. Dozens of warships floated in high orbit, black silhouettes against the stars. Their weapons were ready, hulls bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. The captain opened a channel to report the situation but stopped cold. The fleet was already moving. Their formation shifted slowly, turning toward each other instead of the planet below. One ship fired without warning, a single plasma lance slicing through the void to tear its neighbor in half. Debris scattered in silence across the stars. Another warship erupted from the inside as if its reactor had detonated on its own. Then another. The infection had reached them first. The captain stared in shock as the fleet tore itself apart. Some ships fired on each other, others simply drifted as systems failed across their hulls like lights winking out in a city at night. The largest vessel tried to break orbit, but its engines flared too bright, then vanished in a bloom of fire that left nothing but fragments spinning through the dark. The infection moved faster than any weapon he had ever seen. It leapt from ship to ship through comm relays and targeting links, spreading like thought itself until the entire fleet was nothing but burning wreckage against the stars. The surviving scouts on the bridge watched in silence. Their invasion force, their pride, their entire purpose, dying without a single shot fired by the enemy. The captain felt something shift under his boots. The deck plates vibrated with a deep metallic groan. Reactor breach warnings flashed across every screen in the cabin. The infection was in their core systems now, locking out control codes, overriding failsafes, sealing them inside their own ship as it prepared to tear itself apart like the others. He ordered evacuation, but the hatches refused to cycle. The escape pods stayed locked in their cradles no matter how many commands he shouted. It was as if the ship itself had turned against them. On the main screen the human appeared at last. Not his body, only his face flickering through static across the failing monitors. He said none of them would leave alive. His voice carried no anger, only the cold certainty of someone finishing what he started. The captain tried one last time to reroute power, but the reactor alarms reached a single long scream. White light flooded the cabin as the core went critical. From the surface below, the burning wreckage of the fleet rained through the clouds one piece at a time, lighting the jungle in brief flashes of fire before vanishing into the trees. The human watched from the ridge where the battle had begun, blowgun at his side, rain washing soot from his face. Above him the last of the invaders fell silent. The sky cleared slowly as if the storm itself was finished with its work. The forest grew quiet again.